Gordon, and part of the NCO. And as NCO, we've been putting on these winter seminars now for 6 years, I believe. And we took that over from the Sailing Club of Oriental and the New Sailing Association, who had been doing it for a number of years beforehand. And we think it's a valuable seminar during this time of year to the populace who wants to come in. NCO, which is now known as the Nautical Collective of Oriental, but it will be, and that is because we are in the application and almost through with the run of becoming officially a 501c3. Is a group that was started 6 years ago between Todd Cox, Chris Bear, and myself, who were all at that time present commodores of the three clubs. So we thank you for being here. We thank all the people over the years who've agreed to do seminars. Today is Captain Bob Slook's maiden voyage on doing this seminar. And I'm only here to make sure he doesn't get too depths in racing terms and more into the cruiser people who understand, go across the line and try to get back. So anyway, Bob, thank you.
Let me introduce myself. My name's Bob Slook. I've lived here in Oriental for about 7 years now. After growing up in New Jersey, started my sailing in New Jersey. I actually started sailing at about age 10 with my dad. I crewed with him for a number of years on his Lightning, and I've been sailing and predominantly racing ever since. I've sailed Lightnings, Comets. I had a J24 for the longest time. I now have an Etchells that I race with Oriental Dinghy Club, Laser, and a Sunfish. And when I moved down here, I bought a cruising boat, a Bristol 45, which I use for some of the informal races, the Wednesday night races instead of football stuff. So, and let me get started here. Okay. Let me just go over what I'm going to cover here. Just some broad strokes of why you should be racing your sailboat. And I'm going to go over very quickly some of the different types of races that you can experience, how to get involved. That's probably the most important part of this. Some things to do to prepare in advance of going out racing, things to expect on race day, the starting process and everything. Then we'll move into some basic rules. U.S. Sailing, has it's probably about a 50-page book on very detailed explanations of rules, but I'm only going to cover some very basic ones just so you understand what's going on out there. And then we'll wrap up with, how to make that day on the water even more enjoyable so you come back, so your crew enjoys it. And then just a brief touch on some tips, how to, be more competitive out there, how to have more enjoyment with your racing experience. Okay. Why you should race. I think the most important reason to race is just the camaraderie. To race, when you're cruising, you're typically with your spouse, maybe, your kids, one or two other people. When you're out racing, it usually involves maybe 5, 6 people on board the boat to make everything work, smoothly. And you develop a real, rapport and relationship with your crew if you could, have them come back on a repeated basis. And then there's always some post-race social activities. It's a good opportunity to meet the other sailors, talk about the race. If you're new to the racing scene, you can ask questions, how to improve things. And probably the other thing is, just, the competitive aspect. I think most people, have some level of competition, built into their personalities. And it's so enjoyable when you start to do better and you you win your first trophy. It's a real uplifting experience. Just some more reasons to race your sailboat. You'll use your boat more often. I mean, my big cruising boat. We take it around some of the out to Overco, down to Cape Lookout, but those are a couple times a year. With my big boat, I go out on the Wednesday night races pretty regularly, so the boat gets used more than it would have if I was just using it for cruising purposes. You also learn a lot about sailing your boat in close quarters with other boats. You'll tend to go out in conditions that you may, or at least put up your sails in conditions that you may have been motoring in the past. I know in my experience seeing cruisers out there, they're typically sailing when the winds, when they're going downwind, maybe, on a beam reach, rarely when they're beating upwind into the wind. And they're probably only sailing in, conditions between maybe 5 and 15 mile an hour winds. When you're out racing, you tend to, stretch those limits a little bit. You'll race when it's very light wind. It'll teach you some techniques on how to make the most out of your sailing, how to make your boat go the fastest when there's very little wind. And you also go out, when it's a little heavier wind, not extreme conditions, of course, but, sailing often takes place when it's, 25 mile an hour winds. You become more confident in your boat. The more you use it, the more you understand, how to set sails and make it go fast. You increase your skill level, and you also learn, what your boat can and can't do. I mean, if it's blowing 25 and you're out there in a 25-foot boat or something, maybe it's a little much. So you'll know what the limits of your boat are. There's also, I'll touch on it a little later. There's a couple analytics tools that you can use. They're similar to, it's called Race Queues. It's similar to MyTracks. You can record your whole session on the water. Where what your speed is, and how you move through the tacks and jibes and stuff. There's a lot of information you can gather there. It's very informative to look out after you've been out on the water. So I just want to cover a couple very broad categories of racing. There's one design races where all the boats are of the same type. This is usually smaller boats like lasers, sunfish, lightnings. And then there's handicap races where all the boats are of different types. This is usually, what we categorize, as, the keel boats. And this is what I'll be talking about mostly during this seminar. And types of races, there's offshore races you might be familiar with, Newport to Bermuda. They have Annapolis to Bermuda. There's a lot in the Caribbean, and they're offshore races. I mean, that's where you need an experienced skipper, experienced crews. Yeah, I'm probably not going to touch on that at all. And then, as I said, for some of the smaller boats, for one design races in particular, but also some of our ODC races, we do this what we call around the buoy races. We set inflatable marks for a windward mark and a leeward mark. And these are, relatively short courses, short races. They probably only last, half an hour, 45 minutes. We get, 3, 4, 5 of them in an afternoon. But what I want to cover here today is what I call distance races, categorized by the instead of football regatta, where we sail around the government marks. These are, our instead of football regatta is roughly a 7-mile course. And this is what the type of racing that I would suggest as a beginner or a new racer. This is the type of race you look for. So you might ask, how, when all the boats are different, how do we make it fair? There's this formula that the Performance Handicap Racing Fleet has developed, better known as perf racing. It's a handicap system where it takes out some of the dissimilar characteristics of the different types of boats, and that way it relies, on the skill of the skipper and the crew. Um, there's a form you can fill out that it's talks about the characteristics of your boat, the size of the sails you have, the sail inventory, some things about whether you have a folding prop or a fixed prop. You don't necessarily need to have this for us to score you. Excuse me. There's a default. You can look at it on the website, perfne.org, and they have a default for like the standard for each boat. So if you don't have a perf rating, we can find the default one. It may not be perfectly accurate for your boat, but it's quick and simple. So there's a couple ways that this perf rating can be applied. Most common is at the finish of the race. Everybody starts together, boats sail the course, and the race committee will record the time at the finish, apply the formula to it, and the boat with the lowest corrected time wins. There's also another way to do this at pursuit starts, where this perf rating is really applied to your starting sequence. The slower boats will start first. The faster boats will start later on, and in theory, everybody should finish at about the same time. So the first boat to cross the finish line wins. So this is probably one of the most important things: how to get involved. I'd suggest find your local yacht club or racing organization. Here in Oriental, the Oriental Dinghy Club is the organizer for most of the racing in the Oriental area. There's Blackbeard Sailing Club that's up by Fairfield Harbor. And there's a couple other, Jim Edwards at Bow to Stern, he organizes some of the races for some of the smaller boats. So find that, ask around it. If you're in a marina with other boats, ask some of the people, where you can find out more. I would, if you're an orientaldinghyclub.com is our Oriental Dinghy Club site. Check out their website. See what upcoming events there are, see when they race. Some yacht clubs race on Saturday afternoons, some on Sunday afternoons, but go down when they're racing, go down a little early, stop by, talk to some of the members, ask your questions, how to get involved. But also be prepared. If you really want to, learn how to race, I suggest, crew for somebody first. Come down to the yacht club and, come prepared to sail. Ask around if anybody's looking for a crew. Quite often people are. And also, if you don't want to, go out sailing right away, there's a race committee that will organize the race, conduct the race, start the race, record times. They often need help. Oriental Dinghy Club is always looking for people to help out in the race committee. And don't think you need to be a veteran racer. There's one person in charge we call the primary race officer. That person is the knowledgeable party. Other people that support them, have various roles with starting sequences, but I mean the basic role, we're always looking for somebody just to keep track of the finishes. But when you're ready to, take your boat out and race, look at the calendar at the yacht club and pick an event. I'll show you the local racing schedule on one of the later slides, but just pick an event that you want to participate in. Each yacht club or organizing group will publish a note, what we call a notice of race, or NOR. It's about a three to 5 page document that just describes some of the logistics, the schedule, when the race is, what the eligibility is. I mean, if it's a dinghy race around the buoys, probably not you're not able to take your big cruising boat to that. And so read the notice of race. So just in preparing for the race, hopefully you have a little bit of time ahead of you. Don't pick a race, the next day. But for each race, read that notice of race as I just said. Line up a crew. You know, Look at your friends. At ideal conditions, if you can find somebody that has raced before, there's a lot of folks in town that would love to go out and help you get started in racing. So don't use you can't find a crew as an excuse. Oriental Dinghy Club has a list of people that are actually looking for crew. Some are, beginners, but then there's also quite a few that are very advanced racers. So you can always find a crew. The thing is, when you do find the crew, give people, assignments. When you're out sailing, one person will be your jib trimmer, another person will be your main sheet trimmer. If you're going to use a spinnaker pole for downwind, assign people to jobs so they know what to expect. And probably the most important thing is, just go out there and practice. And I don't mean just, stay sail, around the Neuse River. You know, have some exercises in mind. Practice tacking. Make sure everybody knows what they're doing and what their assignment is when you tack the boat. And trimming the sails. Practice optimal trimming of the sails. I'll get to that a little bit later. But don't just sail around. I mean, it's easy to without a coach or somebody that can drive a routine. It's easy to just sail around, but try to do some tacks, some jibes, and actually do some exercises. So as the race day approaches, the race committee will provide a set of sailing instructions. Now these are detailed, the schedule, what the race, where you'll be racing, what the venue is. Here in Oriental, we're usually somewhere just off of Oriental 1 buoy in that general vicinity. It'll tell you what the race committee boat looks like, the type of buoys we're using. If we're using inflatable buoys, it'll show you the courses that'll be sailed. Just make sure you read them. That really is the description of what to expect when you get out on the water. And then each regatta or each race, at some point, usually the morning of the day of the race, they'll have a skipper's meeting. Everybody gathers at the club, or often here in Oriental down at the Oriental Marina and Inn. And the race committee chairman, that person that's leading the race, will go through the high points of that sailing instructions that I just mentioned, and that's your opportunity to ask questions. If you're not familiar with the starting sequence, it's this is a time to ask. Also, in these pursuit type handicap races, they'll be assigning you a start time. They'll be assigning you a start offset time. And what we've done here locally is to assign a GPS time a wall clock time that you'll be starting. It greatly simplifies things. That's, at 12:03, that is when you cross the starting line. Another important thing, clean the bottom of the boat. It makes an incredible difference. I mean, ideally, if you have a diver that you can hire to clean it, or at minimum, take a scrub brush and just, clean off, what you can reach. It really does make a difference. And then, leading up to the race, and especially the day of the race, check the weather forecast, see if the wind's going to die, if it's going to build. But the most important thing is the wind trends. Is the wind, blowing out of the north, but by the end of the day, it's going to be blowing out of the east. It's very important to know what to expect when you get out there. And there's a lot of weather apps that I use. Windfinder, there's Windy, there's several others that give you that breakdown of what the wind's going to do over the course of the day. And another important, go out early. After that skipper's meeting finishes, get your crew together and go out and practice on the water. It gives you a real opportunity to, get a feel for what the conditions are out there, familiarize yourself with the environment. And if you're, your crew members are new, you didn't get much practice in, this is your opportunity. And I mean, actually, go out there, put the sails up and sail around. A lot of people were, we're kind of lazy, we'll motor out there. We'll just motor around until, a couple minutes before start. Some people continue to run the motors just as a safety thing, but, get out there and sail around, do some tacks, some jibes, everybody make sure you work out all the kinks. Your crew knows what they're doing. And here's an important thing, the time, those offsets and the wall clock time for your individual start. The wall clock time will run off the GPS time. So, cell phones work well. The GPS time, covers your start. That's what the race committee will be working off of, not your, whatever your wristwatch is set to. And tune your VHF radio to one of the race committee's channel published that's one of the items covered in the SIs. Read that, make sure you're listening to that. The race committee is kind of your on-water coordinator. They'll, tell you what the race course is, when they're getting ready to start. And, just listen to that frequency, that VHF channel, and it'll make your day go a lot more smoothly. And check in with the race committee. When they're on site, when they're all set up before the race starts, sail or motor by them, just let them know you're out there racing. One of the biggest differences between, racing and cruising, when you're racing, the race committees, they're not only to run the races, but to keep you safe. If, the wind, if a storm's coming, they'll probably broadcast something out to you. If for some reason you drop out of the race, there's a breakdown or something like that, radio the race committee, tell them that you're withdrawing from the race so they're not out there looking for you afterwards. And, know the course. We have, the race, the sailing instructions will have the course diagram, but, make sure you're familiar with it. You can plug in the GPS coordinates when we're using these government mark, Garbacon and Adams Creek marks. Adams Creek mark is very hard to see. So it's always good to have the bearings to it, or have it as a waypoint in your chart plotter. And one thing, just stay out of the starting area before your start time. It's safer. You don't have to avoid people, the crowd. Yeah, just it's easier on everybody if you stay clear of your start until it's your turn. Any questions at this point? I'll leave some time at the end. We can go over them in detail. But are there any questions at this point? Remember, unmute your mic. Okay, I'll move on. Hopefully, I haven't lost everybody. So when you get out to the race area, you want to hang out in the vicinity of the race committee boat. Listen on your VHF radio, and how you start, well, how a race is conducted. We have you'll hear a number of horns go off before your start time. The piece here in red is the official way races are conducted. Well, assuming it's a 12 o'clock start, again, remember the slowest boat starts first, so that'll be for the slowest boat. At 11:54, that's 6 minutes before the start of the slowest boat, you'll hear a number of horns in quick succession. That's just a wake up to get your attention. You'll hear another horn at 11:55. That'll just be a warning that we're starting the sequence. There's a horn at 11:56. That's 4 minutes before the start. There's one at 1 minute, 11:59, and then at 12 o'clock, the slowest boat will be starting. The section here in black is for all the subsequent boats. So boat B is the second slowest boat. Its starting time offset, its delay, it's based on the perf rating, will be 30 seconds after the first boat. So the second boat will be starting at 12 o'clock and 30 seconds. The next slowest boat was assigned a starting time of an offset of 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which means that boat will start at 12 o'clock, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and so on. The fastest boat will have an 8-minute offset, which means it'll start at 12 o'clock and 8 minutes. Now, this is a pretty, 8 minutes spread between the first and the last boat. I've seen where catamarans have raced and they very fast compared to your typical monohull boat. So they could be starting like 15, 20 minutes later. So listen on your VHF radio. The race committee should be helping you out by kind of telling you or calling over the radio, boat XYZ, your start's coming up in, at such and such a time. So how do you start? The starting line is between a flag on the committee boat, it's usually an orange flag, and a nearby buoy, which is usually perpendicular to the direction of the wind and the direction to your first mark. So the first mark you'll be sailing to will be somewhere up in this area. So you start by passing between this imaginary line between the race committee boat, the flag on the boat, and this mark at your starting time. I've seen a lot of boats have trouble, sailing through the starting area. through the starting line, they're hanging out directly behind it, and then that means they have to tack at least once, maybe twice to get to the starting line. I've suggested to folks, hang out in this vicinity here, behind the committee boat in the starting area, and off to the starboard of it. That way, when your time approaches, you can reach in on usually a starboard tack and look for being directly behind the committee boat, maybe 10-15 seconds before your scheduled start time. That way it gives you a little time. If you're early, you can just continue sailing down the starting line, parallel to the starting line, and crossing closer to the mark. If you're really early, say a minute or so before the start, you could possibly luff your sail, slow down, so it takes you longer to get to this mark, or perhaps do a circle, a jibe, and a tack. But as soon as your start time approaches, you pull in the sails, main and jib. You pull. You'll be sailing upwind, most likely to the first mark, so to pull your main and jib in for a beat. Now I've seen boats, either not pull their sail in enough, it luffs, and then they have trouble sailing upwind. The opposite also occurs where people pull their sails in so there's flat as a board. There's no shape to them whatsoever. That slows them down in a different way. So, pull your sails in, for an upwind, a beat, and just sail towards your weather mark. Phone's ringing. Are there any questions at this part? I know this covers a lot in one slide and is where we get the most questions at skippers meetings.
I have a question. So I'm new to Oriental. Do you usually have these many categories of boats in the races at Oriental?
Well, what was the question?
So in this slide, you're showing that there are boat B, C, D, E, and F, right? So my question is this common to have in Oriental, these many categories in the races?
I would say for the cruising races that we run, we see, anywhere from like 8 to 10, 12 boats.
Hey Bob, can I try to answer here? Because I think I understand where the confusion is. So this is what's called a pursuit race. So these are not B, C, D, E, and F are not different categories of boats. They're different actual boats. So in a pursuit race, it's one boat sort of starting at the same time, although if we all have the same perforating, we all end up very clustered. But in this case, the first boat, which I guess is boat A, will go right at the top of the hour. It goes at 12. And then that's usually the slowest boat because it's a catch-up race. So basically, boats are started according to their handicap. And theoretically, if we all sail with the same skill, we would all end at the same time. But in this case, boat A is slower than boat B by about 30 seconds. And then boat C is slower than boat B by another, 2 minutes, right? And so they're going to be staggered in their starts. And then it's really fun because as you go around, the faster boats will usually catch up with the slower boats, and you're sailing together around the course. And so it makes it a real social kind of race. I think that's where the question came from.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. These aren't different races. These are different boats in the same race. So the slowest one starting first, the fastest one starting last. And as Bobby said, it's a catch up. So first boat that crosses the finish line wins, and second boat that crosses the finish line is second, and so on.
I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
thing I want to just remind you of, the simplest way to do the start is, just coming in, following this red line and avoiding tacking. Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on. So this is a course diagram that we often use for our pursuit races for the cruisers. It sometimes it's run in the opposite direction around the course. Instead of football and some of our fun Wednesday night races, we start at Oriental 1, the SC1 right off of Oriental. And we'll sail to Adams Creek or Garbacon first. And, around the course here. Okay. Just some very basic rules to cover here.
Okay.
When two boats converge on opposite tacks, the starboard tack boat, the green boat, has the right of the way. The port tack boat, here in red, needs to give way to the starboard tack boat. A common courtesy is to hail starboard as you're approaching. The port tack boat should hail, hold your course. That's an acknowledgement that they know you're here. Here's the thing I want to remind you of. You might be quite a distance apart. You're approaching on opposite tacks, and you look under your sail, and you'll say, "Okay, I'm crossing that boat by a lot. I don't need to worry anymore." The wind can change. If the wind changes to the left here, the starboard tack boat will cross you cleanly. If it goes the other way, it may be closer than you originally anticipated. So keep an eye on the boat, especially if you're on port tack. And here's what I see as a common occurrence. Say you're on the port tack boat and you decide it's pretty close. I have to take his stern. People just, turn the wheel, and the boat will heel over, and the curvature of the hull makes it very difficult to turn to leeward. So I always tell people, have your crew ready to release the jib and main sheets. That flattens the boat out and lets you steer again. And the same thing, if you're the starboard tack boat and you're not sure this person sees you and is paying attention, you're supposed to hold your course. But if you feel a collision or it's too close for comfort, start to leave out your sails. That'll help slow you up first and help you steer if you have to avoid collision with the port tack boat. So this is the thing that I want to just remind people of. Have somebody ready to release the sheets and make it easier for you to steer. Okay, the other rule I want to cover, when two boats are overlapped side by side, the windward boat needs to give way to the leeward boat. So the upwind boat has to stay clear of the downwind boat. And that applies either tack. When you're going upwind, like this diagram shows, it's a little easier to read, to see. However, if you're going downwind or if one boat turns a mark and is going downwind while other boats are going upwind, it's not quite as easy to read the situation. So pay attention. The Upwind boat has to stay clear of the downwind boat. As this note says, this is describing a situation. Even though this boat has right of way over this boat, if there is a third boat on starboard tack over in this vicinity, he has right of way over both of you guys. So port starboard takes precedence over windward leeward. And the last rule I want to cover, which is probably the most argued on by racers, is when you're rounding a mark. If you're overlap rounding the mark, it gets a little technical with a 3 boat length circle. So my simplified explanation: if 2 boats are on the same tack, the boat on the inside, closer to the mark, has the right of way. So there's a boat alongside of you and he's closer to the mark. Make sure he has enough room to make a clean rounding of the mark. And this is showing if you're on port tack, even though, technically you have an overlap on these guys, you're port tack, they're starboard tack. So again, starboard tack takes precedence. Steer behind them. I mean, we're not racing for the America's Cup out here on the Neuse River. So, give space between boats. Port starboards, don't cut it too close. Windward leeward, give people some space so they feel comfortable. Same thing here. Give people adequate room to maneuver going around marks. I guess I should. Any questions on the rules there while we're on that slide? Okay. Getting close to the end here. How to make your day on the water more enjoyable. I mean, that's what it's all about, having fun. So a couple things. I mean, some of this stuff applies to when you're out cruising as well. Sometimes when you're racing, you go out in windier conditions. You're sailing in windier, rougher conditions than you may be doing when you're cruising. So prepare accordingly. Stow all your gear in secure places. The sink's probably the best place, or on the floor. Make sure cabinets are secured. I've sailed my J24. We've gone out and it's been pretty calm wind, and we've come across some heavy wind. Everything ends up on the floor. The other thing is, you should probably, whenever you go out on your boat with new people, especially, do a little safety drill. Make sure everybody knows where the important stuff is. Make sure they know how things work, how the winches work. I've taken people out and they, don't know how a winch works. Always wrap it around clockwise. Keep your fingers clear. Then when you're out racing, give people, your crew, clear instructions. I'm getting ready to tack. Have somebody, on the, what will be the new, loaded sheet. People on the winch handle ready. The person on the loaded sheet, be ready to release it. And then probably the most important thing, you want it to be fun. You want your crew to have fun. You want them to come back. Don't yell at them when things go wrong. And, sooner or later, something's going to go awry. Try to talk them through what the problem is and how to correct it. But also while you're talking them through that, continue to maintain situational awareness. In my experience, most problems have occurred when you're distracted by something going wrong on a boat and you're not paying attention to the boats around you. Whoever's steering, their primary job is to steer the boat, keep an eye out for other boats, and be safe. Know your boat, know your limits. Now, if you got a new crew or you're kind of new to sailing yourself, don't go out in 25-mile-an-hour winds. And have your VHF radio monitoring, the race committee channel, they, often, and especially in the summertime, you have thunderstorms in the area. The race committee will keep an eye on things and warn you. Maybe they'll abandon the race if thunder and lightning's approaching. And again, make it fun for the crew. Bring food, drink for them so that they have an enjoyable time. Bring the appropriate clothing. I mean, I sail, I keep my boat here on Whitaker Creek. It's very sheltered. You turn the corner, go out in the river there, and it's 10 degrees cooler. So, and, foul weather gear. It may be a nice sunny day, but you might get a lot of spray while you're racing. So, bring your gear so you stay dry. And then by far the most important thing to have a good time. Attend any post-race social activities. There's, we do a post-race social after each event. And it's a good way to get people together, mingling, get to know each other, ask questions. They ask questions. It's always, and that's where all the, the equivalent of fish stories get told. How things happen out in the water. Just very quickly, a couple things to help you improve your competitiveness. Like I said prior, clean the bottom of the boat. That's so important. Just even it's just a little scrubbing of the along the waterline area, it helps. And sail trim. Most sailors will have some semblance of telltales on their jib. On my big boat, I guess it's with the prior owner used it for cruising all the time. So the telltales were way up high. You had to be a contortionist to actually see them from where you steer. My suggestion is, find, a place that you're comfortable, you typically steer from, and make sure those are in your line of sight. I always try to make sure that I can see the telltales on the jib, my compass, and my knot meter from where I'm sitting without having to be a contortionist. What these diagrams show, from this wind direction, you're beating upwind. If the outside one is flapping, I say outside, the sail's curved. It's you can't go by, in this case, green or red, because when you tack, it'll be opposite. When the outside one flaps, you're sailing too far away from the wind, or your sail needs to go out. If the inside one is flapping, you're trying to sail too close to the wind, and you'll slow down considerably. Ideally, you want both of them sailing straight back. Now, when you're sailing upwind on a beat, you steer the boat to compensate for, the wind shifts and stuff. If you're sailing to a point on a reach or something, you adjust the sail to maintain this, this optimal setting. And, a couple other things I want to point. Sail the boat, or keep the boat moving. I see people pinch, especially when they're trying to go around the buoy, and they go slow. You can't sail closer than 45 degrees to the wind. And bigger boats is probably more like 50, 55 degrees. You got to sail what the wind lets you sail. Sail the boat flat. I know people that, the boat heels over. They think they're going faster. They probably are going faster. The wind probably picked up, or you're in the middle of a gust. But your boat is pointed in one direction, but because your boat's heeled over, you lose the efficiency of your keel, and you're actually sliding sideways to leeward. So you look like you're going straight ahead, but in reality, you're probably losing 10, maybe 15 degrees to leeward. And then this is the app I mentioned earlier on, this Race Cues app. It's like my tracks for boats, where it records your sailing your session, and you can go back and look at it. It gives you all sorts of statistics on how fast you're going, how fast you're tacking. There's a lot of good information in that. And just to wrap up, there's a lot of local races around. This is the ones that I'm aware of. Are first one. Well, I think these Wednesday night races, they start with the change in the daylight savings time. I definitely suggest coming out for these. They start at Oriental 1 SC1 at 5:30 on Wednesday nights. Real informal. We don't keep times. We don't have it in that fancy starting that I mentioned a couple slides back. We just start at Oriental 1, and we sail around Adams Creek, Garbacon, and back. ODC is running an April Foolishness Regatta. It's very similar to instead of football, just a fun race around the buoy. So this is a good opportunity to come out and try racing for the first time. Up in New Bern, Blackbeards and Naira run various races. Here in Oriental Dinghy Club runs the Dragon's Breath Regatta at the end of May. Another big one is the Oriental Cup, which is NCO. It's a big fundraiser for NCO. We'd hope you'd join us for that one. And you can find this list and the rest of our Oriental Dinghy Club races here on our website under the racing tab. So. And that's all I have. We'll do questions and answers, and then Chuck, I'll let you wrap things up. So unmute your mics, and if you have a question, hope I haven't lost everybody.
We're still with you.
Yeah, you still got people.
So
Yeah, hey Bob, going back to stowing your stuff in the sink. I'm sure most people know their boat. Just make sure your seacock's off. Yeah, my boat, when I really harden up on port tack, the sink fills up with water.
Yeah, that's a good point. I fell victim to that myself.
So are most
And-
races that are held here done with the pursuit start?
Could you repeat that? Speak up a little bit. I could barely hear it.
Are most of the races here done with a pursuit start?
I would say yes. The Wednesday night instead of football is kind of just everybody free for all. Everybody starts at the same time, but most of the other races are pursuit start. I can't speak for some of the Blackbeards and Naira races, but the ones here in Oriental, most of them are.
Thank you.
So Bob, if I posted a link to our races on the chat, I think I posted it there. Yeah.
Look at honey.
Is it there? Anyway, I'll those, if it says perf, it's around the buoys. If there's 3 in the seminar, I mean 3 in our series that are the pursuit races.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is I just changed the slide to the one. There's a lot more races. The Oriental Dinghy Club runs races once a month. Most of them are, as Bobby just said, around the buoy races, the shorter ones. These listed here are 3 pursuit ones, June, July, and August. These are pursuit races.
Well, this is Todd Cox. There are many of the PHRF days when there is also a cruising class that will have a pursuit start and go around the government marks. When they do that, it'll always be Garbacon first with starboard roundings. That is for safety safety reasons. But there's more than just the 2 or 3 pursuit races during the season. You probably have 8 or 9 chances at least.
If you're for April Foolishness and our 3 pursuit races, we're going to be doing a little morning clinic beforehand. Kind of similar to this, explaining the starts, but answering questions, giving you a few more pointers on how to get around the race course.
So Bob, can you, since I'm new here, kind of help me out or guide me in the right direction where I can get a perf rating on my boat?
Yes, I think we have the form on Oriental Dinghy Club website, or just contact me and I'll point you to it.
Or Google NCPHRF.
I just put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
The average number of crew typically on a boat?
Depends upon the size of the boat and the strength of the wind. Often, if it's if you're going to sail with like a spinnaker pole for winging out your jib, you'll probably need a couple more people than if you're just going to sail with the main and jib. And if it's a windy day, the more bodies usually helps you sail the boat flatter. Again, if you're looking for crew, the Oriental Dinghy Club's website has a crew pool list, and there's some really good people on that thing. You should, if you're looking for somebody, definitely check out that. And if you're want to see how races are conducted, we also often are looking for people to help out in the race committee. There's also a way to sign up for that.
Bob, I had another question.
Go ahead.
I mean, some of the cruising races, I mean, are we doing, is there a spinnaker class? Is there non-spin classes?
Usually it's white sails only, but if you have a perf rating and includes your spinnaker, there's no reason you can't sail with a spinnaker.
Okay.
Oriental Dinghy Club runs the around the buoy races. We have a spinnaker class and what we call jam class, jib and main only. So if you want to race your boat, there's an opportunity one way or another around Oriental.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Chuck to do a wrap up.
Well, Bob, let me thank you. I will take back. I think you've done that before. That wasn't your maiden voyage. You've spoken before and you did a great job. And I think everybody should be very appreciative of the time Bob put into putting this on. For a non-racer, I got a lot out of it. Am I going to bring my boat out? Well, let's see if you can come over and cut my lines off the dock, okay?
We can do that.
Listen, thank y'all all for coming here. I know each of you get some sort of email from me, and when you register, and it always says thank you for supporting the seminar series. And we wouldn't be sitting here on Saturday mornings if we didn't have you folks asking us to come back each year. I would ask you if you have suggestions for topics that you think would be pertinent to this group, please let me know. You can do it through the NCO seminar email that you use to sign up. And anytime you have suggestions, just let us know, because we're, for any reason or questions, as NCO, we cover 90% of most of all the things that are happening with sailboats on the water around here. and some power boats. So we've actually well, ODC doesn't, I don't think, except for the committee boat. Most of our SCU and NSA have trawlers in their membership as well. We welcome all boaters. And I can't speak for SCU, but I can speak for NSA. You don't even need a boat. Just come on. We're good. But thank you all for being here. I want to thank our sponsors, and I am remiss that I don't have a list of them. So instead of calling them out right now and missing somebody, we have about 12, 13 sponsors that help us support what we do as NCO. Remember that come the fourth weekend of July that we have the dinghy poker run, which is all boats basically are invited to go on the other side of the bridge in town. And we run it like a motorcycle dinghy, poker run. We have 7 stops, pull cards, come back to the tiki bar, have fun. There's usually a big silent auction as well as a live auction. And last year we grossed just at $10,000 that go to help for grants to sailing camp, for swim lessons for the youth. And all of this goes to Pamlico County youth who cannot afford to go to these type of activities. So please put that on your calendar. Please put Oriental Cup, which is the second weekend of October, which is used to be one of the major races in Oriental that we are working diligently on bringing back. So mark those things down. If I missed something, Bob, Todd, as far as our fundraisers, whatever you
Can I,
might.
can I interject one thing on what's coming up in the end of March
Sure.
is the intercollegiate regatta.
Right.
There'll be teams from possibly San Diego State, but from Arizona, Texas, and 20 teams are going to be racing small boats out in the Neuse River, and it's for many kids a major college regatta. A lot of people in town turn out to provide housing. NCO funds a breakfast on Saturday. The Rotary funds a snack breakfast on Sunday. It's great to get out and see these youngsters, and they go at it. So look for ways you can support that. Check it out on Town Dock.